was October, and Ray Collins's repair shop sat at the edge of Route 78, on a stretch of road that cut through the New Mexico desert like a forgotten scar on the skin of the earth. There was an old gas pump, 2 rusted garage doors, and a sign that read, Ray's Engine Repair, letters faded by sun and solitude. Ray was 53 years old, hands marked by grease and loss. He had lived alone since Sarah died 3 years earlier. Cancer, fast, cruel. He had stopped going to church right after the funeral, not out of anger but emptiness, as if the part of him that heard prayers had been buried along with her. That night, he was closing up the shop when he saw the headlights. An old car, something between a 1950s Chevrolet and something that shouldn't exist, stopped in front of the gas pump. It made no sound. It just stopped, as if the air itself had decided to hold it there. Ray wiped his hands on the old rag he carried in his pocket and walked toward the vehicle. The driver stepped out. He was tall, very tall. He wore a dark coat that seemed made of fabric, but reflected light in a strange way, as if it absorbed and returned it simultaneously. His face was serene, almost beautiful, but there was something about him that made Ray feel he was looking at something beyond human form, as if the skin was merely a suggestion, not a truth. The man didn't smile. He just looked. The engine is different, he said with a voice that seemed to come from inside Ray's chest, not from the air. Can you adjust it? Ray blinked. He felt a cold that didn't come from the wind. Sure, he replied, more from instinct than certainty. He lifted the hood, and that's when he saw it. The engine wasn't made of metal, at least not completely. There were parts that glowed with a soft bluish light that pulsed like a heartbeat, tubes that seemed alive, gears that rotated without touching each other, suspended by something Ray couldn't name. He stepped back. This isn't a regular engine. The man simply nodded. No, but you know what to do. And the strange thing was, Ray did know. His hands moved before his mind could question. He adjusted a piece here, realigned a circuit there. The engine responded as if grateful, as if it recognized Ray's touch as something familiar, ancestral. When he finished, Ray stepped back, breathless. Who are you? The man looked at the sky. The stars were brighter than Ray remembered seeing in his entire life. They didn't twinkle. They just burned, steady, like attentive eyes. I came to gather those who are ready, the man said. Ready for what? For what has always been coming. Ray felt something move inside him. Not fear, but something deeper, as if a long-locked door had begun to creak open. Are you one of them? The aliens? The lights people see? The man turned to face him. His eyes were dark, but Ray felt there were galaxies within them. I am what you need me to be, he said. A messenger, a reminder, an echo of what was promised. Promised by whom? By the one who speaks in all tongues. Ray swallowed hard. His throat was dry. He wanted to ask more, wanted to demand answers, but the words died before being born, because deep down he already knew. He had always known. Sarah, Ray whispered, my wife. Is she okay? The man didn't respond immediately. He simply extended his hand and touched Ray's shoulder. And in that touch, Ray felt. He felt everything. He felt Sarah laughing in the kitchen, felt the warmth of her hand in his, felt her last breath, but also felt something more, something that had no words. A presence, a light, a certainty that she hadn't disappeared, only changed form. Ray fell to his knees. The man withdrew his hand. What you call death, he said, is only the first breath on the other side. Ray raised his eyes, tears streaming down his face. Why are you here? Why now? Because time is folding upon itself, the man replied. Because the harvest is near, and because there are souls that need to remember before the door closes. What door? The one that separates what is from what always was. Ray didn't understand, yet at the same time understood everything. It was as if the words were symbols, and the symbols were feelings, and the feelings were memories of something he had never lived, but always known. Are you going to take me? Ray asked, voice trembling. The man shook his head. Not yet. You have work to do here. What work? Live, love, remind others they are not alone. And then, without warning, the man returned to the car. The engine, that impossible engine, came to life with a low hum, almost musical. The vehicle began to move away, gliding down the road without the wheels completely touching the ground. Ray remained there, on his knees, watching the taillight disappear into the night. But before it vanished completely, he heard a voice, not with his ears, but inside his head, his heart, his soul. When he returns, it won't be with thunder. It will be with silence, and those who know how to listen will see the heavens open. Ray didn't sleep that night. He sat on the wooden bench in front of the shop, looking at the sky, waiting for something to happen, for the man to return. for the world to explain what he had seen. But nothing happened. The sun rose, as it always rose. Birds sang. A truck passed on the road, honking when it saw him there. Everything seemed normal, but Ray knew nothing was normal. He entered the shop and looked at his own hands. They still smelled of grease, still had the same scars. But when he closed his eyes, he could feel the energy of that alien engine, the vibration of that touch on his shoulder, Sarah's presence somewhere beyond the reach of the senses. He tried to work. A customer brought an old Ford with transmission problems. Ray fixed it. Another brought a motorcycle with a clogged carburetor. Ray cleaned it. He did everything mechanically, but his mind was elsewhere. He began to notice things. The way sunlight entered through the shop window, it seemed more alive, as if dancing. The sound of wind in nearby trees seemed to carry words, as if the earth itself was whispering secrets. And people, customers, travelers, delivery drivers, Ray began to see them differently, not just as bodies that talked and paid and left, but as souls, tired souls, lost, searching for something they couldn't name. And he wanted to help, but how? 3 days later, Ray was changing the oil on a pickup when he felt it, a presence. He raised his eyes and saw a woman standing at the shop entrance. She was young, maybe 30 years old, with eyes red from crying. Can you take a look at my car?" she asked, voice trembling. Ray nodded and followed her to an old Honda parked outside. He lifted the hood, but as he looked at the engine, he felt something more, something that didn't come from the car, but from her. Pain, loss, fear. He didn't know how he knew, but he knew. "You lost someone," Ray said without thinking. The woman froze. How do you know?" Ray looked at her, and in that moment he saw, not with his eyes but with something deeper. He saw a boy, a small boy with blonde hair, laughing, and then he saw the boy disappearing, like smoke in the wind. "Your son," Ray whispered. He's not far." The woman began to cry. "He died 6 months ago. Leukemia. I can't move forward. I can't feel anything but emptiness." Ray didn't know what to say. He wasn't a pastor, wasn't a therapist. He was just an old mechanic who had seen something he couldn't explain. But then he remembered. He remembered the touch on his shoulder, the feeling of Sarah still existing just on the other side. He extended his hand and touched the woman's arm, lightly, respectfully, and she felt it. She felt her son, felt his laughter, felt his presence warm and alive and real, enveloping her like an invisible embrace. She gasped. "He's here," she whispered. "I can feel it. He's here." Ray withdrew his hand. "He never left," Ray said. "We just forget to listen." The woman looked at him with wide eyes, tears streaming down her face, but now they were different tears, not of pain, but of relief, of hope. "Thank you," she said. "Thank you." She got into the car, which miraculously started on the first try, and drove away. Ray stood there, trembling. What had he done? What was happening to him? In the following days, more people came. A trucker who had lost his faith, a teenage girl who was thinking of giving up on everything, an old man who was afraid of dying. And with each of them, Ray felt. He felt the pain, felt the search, and somehow he managed to touch something inside them, something they had forgotten, something that was asleep. He didn't preach, didn't quote the Bible, didn't talk about God or Jesus directly. He simply reminded people there was more than pain, more than fear, more than emptiness, and people left different, not healed perhaps, but transformed, as if a light had been turned on inside them. But Ray was also changing. He began to have dreams of lights in the sky, of millions of people being lifted, not by ships, but by something more subtle, as if pulled by invisible strings of pure love. He saw Jesus, but not like in church paintings. He saw a presence, a light so intense it had no form, but carried all faces at once. And he heard the voice, the same voice as that man. "The separation is coming. Those who choose love will be gathered. Those who choose fear will be left behind. But it's not punishment. It's choice. It has always been choice." Ray would wake up sweating, heart racing. He knew something was coming, something big, something inevitable. Then, on a night of full moon, the man returned. Ray was closing the shop when he saw the light. It wasn't the car this time. It was just the light, a brilliant sphere hovering over the road, silent and majestic. The man emerged from it, walking through the air as if there were invisible steps. Ray wasn't afraid. He just waited. "Did you understand?" the man asked. "Understand what?" "That what you call divine was never distant. It has always been here, in every touch, in every look. In every moment you chose love instead of fear." Ray nodded slowly. "And Jesus?" he asked. "Is he real?" The man smiled. The first time Ray saw him smile, He is the name you gave the bridge, but there are many bridges, many names, many paths, all lead to the same home. And the rapture? It's not an event, the man said. It's an awakening. Those who are ready will see. Those who aren't will continue dreaming. Ray felt tears in his eyes. And me, am I ready? The man placed his hand on Ray's shoulder again. You always have been. And then something happened. Ray saw. He saw Sarah waiting for him on the other side. He saw the woman's boy laughing. He saw all the souls he had touched, all shining like stars. He saw Earth from above, beautiful and fragile. He saw the universe as a web of light, each thread connected, each soul part of a greater whole. And he understood. He understood they had never been alone. He understood that God wasn't a distant entity, but the very essence of connection, of love, of existence. He understood that Jesus wasn't just a man, but the symbol of possibility, the proof that human and divine could be one. And he understood that the rapture wouldn't be an abduction, but an invitation to see beyond the veil. When Ray came to, he was alone again, but he didn't feel alone. He looked at his own hands and saw they glowed, faintly, as if they had absorbed some of that light. He smiled. For the first time in 3 years, he truly smiled. Perhaps heaven was never above us. Perhaps it has always been the light that appears when we stop running. Maybe the strangers we meet on empty roads aren't strangers at all. Maybe they are messengers, reminders, echoes of promises made before time began. Ray never saw the man again, but he didn't need to, because what he had learned couldn't be unseen. What he had felt couldn't be unfelt. He continued fixing engines, continued living in that small shop on Route 78, but something had changed. People who stopped there no longer left the same. They couldn't explain it, but they felt it. A warmth, a peace, a reminder that they were part of something larger. And on clear nights, when the stars burned bright and steady, Ray would sit on his wooden bench and look up, not searching for answers, not waiting for the man to return, just listening to the silence that wasn't really silence at all, listening to the song the universe had been singing all along. Part 2. The weeks that followed were unlike anything Ray had ever known. He didn't tell anyone what had happened. Who would believe him? A strange man with an impossible engine, a vision of his dead wife, a touch that changed everything. But silence has a way of speaking louder than words. People noticed. The first was old Tom Henderson, who ran the general store 2 miles down the road. He stopped by the shop one afternoon with a transmission problem, but what he really wanted was to talk. His daughter had stopped calling. His wife had dementia and didn't recognize him anymore. He felt invisible, like a ghost in his own life. Ray listened, really listened. Not the way mechanics usually listen while thinking about the next job. He listened with his whole being, the way the stranger had listened to him. And when Tom was done talking, Ray said something he didn't plan to say. "You're not invisible, Tom. You're just standing in your own shadow. Step into the light and your daughter will see you again." Tom blinked. "What light?" "The one that's always been there. You just forgot to look." Tom left confused, but something had shifted. That night, he called his daughter. They talked for 3 hours. She cried. He cried. Walls that had been built over years crumbled in minutes. The next morning, Tom came back to the shop. He didn't need anything fixed. He just stood there, looking at Ray with wet eyes. "I don't know what you did," Tom said, "but thank you." Ray shook his head. "I didn't do anything, you did." But that wasn't entirely true, and Ray knew it. Something had been awakened inside him. A gift, a curse, a responsibility. He could feel people's pain now, not in some vague, empathetic way, but physically. When someone walked into his shop carrying grief, Ray felt it in his chest like a weight. When someone arrived broken by guilt, Ray felt it like a knot in his stomach. And somehow, through a touch, a word, a look, he could ease it. Not erase it, never erase it, but lighten it. Remind them they weren't alone in carrying it. Word spread, not through advertisements or social media, but in the old way, whispers, stories shared at diners and gas stations. People began making detours to visit Ray's shop. Some came with real mechanical problems, others came with excuses. A young man whose wife had left him, a woman whose cancer had returned, a father who couldn't forgive himself for missing his son's last birthday before the accident. Ray met them all, fixed their cars, fixed something deeper. He never preached, never quoted scripture, never claimed to have answers. He just reminded them that love doesn't end when the heart stops beating, that forgiveness isn't something you earn, but something you choose, that the universe isn't cold and empty, but alive and aware and pulling for them. And people believed him, not because he was eloquent or charismatic, but because when Ray spoke, They felt it, felt the truth of it resonating in their bones, in their souls, in the parts of themselves they thought were dead. But not everyone was grateful. Pastor Williams from the Baptist church in town heard about Ray, heard that people were going to a mechanic instead of coming to church, heard that some were calling Ray's shop holy ground. Williams didn't like that. He showed up one Tuesday afternoon, driving a pristine Cadillac that didn't need any repairs. "Ray Collins," he said, stepping out with his Bible under his arm. "We need to talk." Ray wiped his hands and nodded. "What can I do for you, Pastor?" "You can stop," Williams said flatly. "Stop whatever it is you're doing. You're leading people astray, making them think they can find God in a garage instead of a church." Ray looked at him for a long moment. "I'm not leading anyone anywhere. I'm just listening." "You're more than listening. You're performing some kind of, I don't know what, witchcraft, New Age nonsense. I'm helping people remember. Remember what? That they're loved." Williams's face hardened. "Love comes from God, Ray, through Jesus Christ, not through some roadside mysticism." Ray felt the weight in his chest, not his own but Williams's. Beneath the anger, beneath the righteousness, there was fear, fear of irrelevance, fear that his entire life's work was slipping through his fingers. Ray stepped forward and, before Williams could react, placed a hand on his shoulder. Williams gasped. He saw himself as a young man, kneeling in prayer, weeping with genuine devotion. He saw the moment he had first felt God's presence, a warmth, a peace, a knowing that he was part of something infinite. And then he saw what he had become, saw how the institution had replaced the experience, how the rules had replaced the relationship, how the fear of losing control had replaced the trust in divine flow. Williams pulled away, stumbling backward. What did you do to me?" "I showed you what you already know," Ray said gently. "You loved God once. You can love him again, but you have to stop trying to own him." Williams stared at Ray, breathing hard. His face cycled through anger, confusion, fear, and finally, something softer, something broken open. He got back in his Cadillac without another word. But as he drove away, Ray saw him wipe his eyes. That night, Ray couldn't sleep. He sat outside under the stars, the same bench where he had sat the night the stranger first came. The air was cool. The desert was silent except for the occasional call of a coyote in the distance. Ray closed his eyes and spoke into the darkness. "I don't know if you can hear me," he said. "I don't even know what to call you. God? Jesus? The stranger? But I need to understand. Why me? Why give me this? Whatever this is?" Silence. Then in the stillness, an answer came. Not in words, but in knowing. Because you were empty enough to be filled. Because you had nothing left to protect. Because you asked to feel her again, and we showed you that she never left. Ray opened his eyes. Tears streamed down his face. "What am I supposed to do?" he whispered. "Live, love, remind, and then what? Then you come home." The dreams intensified. Every night, Ray saw the same vision. Day sky splitting open, not violently, but like a curtain being gently pulled aside. Light pouring through, not blinding, but welcoming, and people rising, not in fear, but in recognition, like children running to a parent they thought they'd lost. But in the dream, there were also those who didn't rise, not because they were unworthy, but because they couldn't see. They stood on the ground, looking around confused, wondering why everyone was so excited about nothing. It broke Ray's heart. He began to understand. The rapture wasn't about who was good or bad. It was about who was awake, who had learned to see beyond the veil of matter and fear, who had remembered that they were more than flesh and bone. And his job wasn't to force anyone awake. It was simply to ring the bell, to remind them it was time to open their eyes. 3 months after the stranger's visit, something changed. Ray was working on a Ford truck when he felt it, a shift in the air, a pressure, like before a storm but sweeter. He looked up at the sky. It was happening, not the full event, not yet, but the beginning, the first ripple. People started arriving at the shop, not for repairs. They didn't know why they were coming. They just felt pulled. One by one, they parked and stepped out, looking around confused. "I don't know why I'm here," a woman said. "Me neither," said a man. "I was driving home and just turned around," another admitted. Ray counted 12 people, all strangers to each other, all standing in the dusty lot of a roadside garage, looking lost and found at the same time. Ray climbed onto the wooden bench so they could see him. "You're here because you heard the call," he said. "What call?" someone asked. "The one that's been sounding since the beginning. The one that says, 'Wake up, remember, come home.'" "Home to where?" Ray pointed at the sky. "To the place we never really left." And then, as if on cue, the stars began to move. Not literally, But to those with eyes to see, the sky became alive. Patterns emerged, constellations shifted, and in the center of it all, a light began to grow. Some people saw it, their faces lifted, mouths open in wonder. Others didn't. They looked around, confused. "What are you all staring at?" Ray's heart ached for them. "It's okay," he said to those who couldn't see. "You will. Maybe not tonight. Maybe not this year. But eventually, you will. The door doesn't close. It just waits." Those who saw the light began to weep, not from sadness but from the overwhelming beauty of finally understanding, finally feeling the connection they had always sensed but never confirmed. And then Ray saw him, the stranger, standing at the edge of the light, smiling. "Ray Collins," the voice said, echoing in everyone's mind simultaneously. "Well done." Ray's knees buckled. "Is it time?" "Not yet, but soon, very soon." "What do I do until then?" "What you've been doing. Prepare the way. Remind the wanderers. Light the lamps." The light began to fade. The stranger began to fade with it. But before he disappeared completely, he said one last thing. "Tell them it's not about belief. It's about love. Belief divides. Love unites. And love is the only thing that crosses between worlds." The people dispersed that night, changed. Some would tell others what they saw. Some would keep it secret, sacred. But all of them carried something new, a seed of knowing that would grow in its own time. Ray went back to his bench. He thought about Sarah, about the stranger, about all the broken souls who had passed through his shop, about the light in the sky and the light in their eyes, and he understood. The rapture wasn't a single moment. It was a process, a gradual awakening. Some souls would rise early, eager and ready. Others would take longer, needing more time to heal, to remember, to trust. But all would be gathered eventually, because love doesn't leave anyone behind. It just waits, patient, eternal, unwavering. Ray continued his work, fixed engines, mended hearts, reminded souls of what they had forgotten, and on clear nights, when the wind was still and the stars burned bright, he would sit on his bench and smile, because he knew that Sarah was waiting, that the stranger would return, that the door was open, and the light was growing. And when his time came, whether tomorrow or decades from now, he would be ready. Not because he was holy or perfect or special, but because he had learned the only lesson that mattered. We are not separate from the divine. We never were. We are the divine, experiencing itself through skin and breath and choice. And when we remember that, truly remember, the heavens open not above us, but within us. That is the rapture. That is the return. That is home. Truth or fiction? Perhaps not even the storyteller knows. Here, stories exist to touch you and make you reflect. The magical only reveals itself to those who allow themselves to feel, not to those who insist on seeking certainties.